The massive chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as the data streams appeared on every screen. Zeth Kara, senior member from the Velthari Collective, watched the impossible numbers scroll past her compound eyes. Her breathing apparatus clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme distress among her people. "This cannot be accurate," whispered Council Leader Mordun from his floating platform. The ancient crystalline being's form flickered with nervous energy. "Run the calculations again." The AI system's voice echoed through the chamber with mechanical certainty. Data confirmed. Species designation, human, has achieved full technological ascension. Timeline, 407 standard years. From first radio transmission to faster-than-light capability. A collective gasp rose from the assembled representatives. 400 years. The fastest ascension in galactic history had taken the Zephyrians 3,000 years, and they were considered genetic anomalies for their rapid development. Zeth Kara accessed her personal files on the third planet of the Sol system. Earth. Classified as a Class 12 death world. Gravity nearly twice galactic standard. Atmosphere filled with corrosive oxygen. Weather patterns that could kill most species in minutes. Tectonic activity that regularly destroyed entire regions. It was a nightmare world where nothing civilized should survive. Yet somehow, the creatures that called it home had not just survived, they had thrived. "Show us their current technological level," Mordun commanded. The main display shifted to show sleek ships emerging from the Sol system. The vessels moved with impossible grace through asteroid fields that would challenge even veteran pilots. Their hulls gleamed with unknown alloys, and energy readings suggested power sources that defied current understanding. "Their ships," noted tech specialist Quinn from the hegemony, her tentacles writhing with confusion. "They show no fear of radiation fields or debris. They fly through hazards like they are empty space." Zeth Kara pulled up the historical files again. First contact protocols had been established for humanity decades ago, but implementation had been delayed indefinitely. The reasoning was simple. Any species that could survive on Earth was too dangerous for standard diplomatic contact. The early observations had been disturbing. Humans regularly engaged in activities that would kill other species for entertainment. They threw themselves from great heights, attached to fabric sheets. They dove deep underwater without breathing apparatus. They ran incredible distances for no survival reason. They consumed substances that were literal poison to most life forms. Most concerning of all, they fought each other constantly. Not just territorial disputes, but massive conflicts involving millions of individuals. Yet somehow, instead of destroying themselves, these conflicts seemed to make them stronger and more innovative. "Council Leader," Zeth Kara said, her voice carrying across the chamber. "I request permission to share the early observation files." Mordun's crystalline form pulsed with uncertainty. "The psychological impact reports?" "All of them." The chamber dimmed as classified files appeared on screen. Video footage from automated probes showed humans in their natural environment. A young human child playing in frozen water, laughing as temperatures dropped to levels that would kill most species instantly. Adult humans deliberately entering burning structures to rescue others. Groups of humans climbing massive mountain peaks for no logical reason other than personal satisfaction. "Look at their medical practices," Zeth Kara said, highlighting specific data. "They regularly cut open their own bodies to repair damage. They inject themselves with weakened diseases to build immunity. They replace damaged organs with mechanical devices or organs from other humans." The Velthari representative paused as she reached the most disturbing files. "They have something called extreme sports. Activities designed to be as dangerous as possible, while still technically survivable." Councilmember Hivesh from the Pacifist Union made a sound of distress. "Why would they deliberately seek danger?" "Because," Zeth Kara said quietly, "danger is their natural state." Earth is so hostile that beings from other worlds require massive life support systems just to visit. To humans, the rest of the galaxy must seem almost gentle. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. If humans found their own world challenging, what would they think of other planets? How would they react to threats that sent entire civilizations fleeing in terror? There's more, the AI announced. Long-range sensors detect human colonies being established in the neutral zone. Impossible, Mordoon said. The neutral zone contains 12 different hazardous environment types. No single species can survive in all of them. The display showed flourishing human settlements on worlds with crushing gravity, toxic atmospheres, and extreme temperatures. Worlds that had been written off as uninhabitable by galactic civilization were now home to thriving human communities. They're not using environmental suits, Quinn observed, her tentacles pale with shock. They're adapting the environments to suit them, but they're also adapting themselves. Zethkara felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. Humans weren't just surviving in impossible conditions. They were making those conditions work for them. They were turning Deathworlds into homes. Council leader, she said formally. I believe we need to reconsider our classification system. Humans are not just another ascending species. They represent something entirely new. What do you mean? Every other species in galactic history has sought to escape their homeworld's challenges through technology. We build better ships to avoid dangerous space. We create better life support to survive hostile environments. We develop better weapons to defeat threats from a safe distance. She paused, accessing her files one more time. Humans appear to have done the opposite. They have used technology to make themselves more capable of facing challenges directly. Their ships are fast and maneuverable because they pilot them personally into dangerous situations. Their tools are robust because they use them in extreme conditions. Their weapons are effective at close range because they fight face-to-face with their enemies. The chamber fell silent again as the implications became clear. You're saying, Mordoon said slowly, that human technology isn't designed to avoid their Deathworld nature. It's designed to enhance it. Exactly. And now, they have faster-than-light travel. The weight of that statement settled over the council like a heavy blanket. Somewhere in the galaxy, a species that considered Class 12 Deathworlds to be home was now spreading to other star systems. A species that thrived on challenge and danger was now mobile on a galactic scale. What do we do? Whispered Hivesh. Zethkara looked at the data streams showing more human ships leaving Sol System each day. Each one headed toward unknown destinations. Each one carrying beings that evolution had forged into something the galaxy had never seen before. We wait, she said quietly, and we hope they come in peace. Outside the council chamber, automated systems updated the threat assessment for humanity. The classification changed from potential contact species to unknown galactic factor. In the depths of space, human ships continued their steady expansion into the galaxy. Their crews, unaware that their very existence had just shifted the balance of galactic civilization. The age of human ascension had begun. The diplomatic station orbiting Kepler 442b had been designed for peaceful first contact scenarios. Its elegant curves and soft lighting were meant to create a welcoming atmosphere for new species joining galactic civilization. Today, those same features felt inadequate as Ambassador Jin Su-min stepped through the airlock. Zethkara waited in the main reception chamber, surrounded by representatives from 12 different species. The Galactic Council had decided that humanity's first official diplomatic contact should involve multiple witnesses. What they hadn't expected was how unsettling it would be to actually see a human in person. Jin Su-min was smaller than the probe data had suggested, but her presence filled the room in a way that made everyone uncomfortable. She moved with a fluid grace that suggested perfect control over her environment. Her eyes swept across the assembled representatives with an intensity that made several species instinctively step back. "Greetings," Jin said, in carefully practiced galactic standard. Her voice was deeper than expected, with undertones that somehow conveyed both warmth and hidden strength. I am honored to represent humanity in these proceedings. The formal words were correct, but something about her delivery made them sound like a predator announcing itself to potential prey. Welcome, human Jin Sumin, Zethkara replied, fighting the urge to increase the distance between them. We are pleased to initiate contact with your species. Jin smiled, revealing white teeth that looked far too sharp for a supposedly evolved being. Several representatives made quiet sounds of distress. We have prepared standard documentation regarding trade agreements, territorial boundaries, and cultural exchange protocols, continued Zethkara, accessing her files through her neural interface. That's very kind, Jin said, her smile widening slightly. But my people have already begun establishing ourselves in several systems. We weren't aware we needed permission. The statement hit the chamber like a physical blow. Mordun's crystalline form flickered rapidly with agitation. You have established colonies? Without council approval? We've made homes in places that weren't being used, Jin replied, her tone remaining pleasant despite the growing tension in the room. Empty worlds with challenging conditions. We assumed they were available since no one else wanted them. Zethkara accessed the current star charts. Human settlements had appeared in 7 systems previously marked as uninhabitable. Worlds with crushing gravity, toxic atmospheres, and unstable weather patterns. Places where even emergency shelters couldn't function for more than a few days. These worlds are classified as hazardous, explained tech specialist Quinn, her tentacles writhing nervously. They are not suitable for colonization by any known species. Jin's expression shifted slightly, and for a moment, something dangerous flickered behind her eyes. Are you telling my people they can't live in their own homes? The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Every representative present felt a primitive fear response activate, warning them they were in the presence of something that could be extremely dangerous if provoked. No, of course not, Zethkara said quickly, trying to defuse the situation. We simply want to understand how you survive in such conditions. The intensity faded from Jin's expression, replaced by what looked like genuine confusion. Survive? These are beautiful worlds. Paradise planets with clean air, fresh water, and reasonable weather. My children love playing in the snowstorms on Kepler 438c. Snowstorms that regularly reach -40 degrees, with winds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour, Quinn whispered. Like I said, reasonable weather, Jin replied with obvious fondness. Much calmer than the typhoons back home. The assembled representatives exchanged glances of growing alarm. If humans considered Class 12 Deathworld weather to be calm, what did they think of actual dangerous conditions? Perhaps, Mordun suggested carefully, we could arrange for your people to settle in more suitable environments, worlds with gentle climates and stable conditions. Jin's expression became polite but distant. That's very generous. But my people prefer a bit of challenge in their environment. Soft living makes us weak. She paused, then added with what seemed like genuine concern. Are you sure you're all healthy? You seem very fragile. Do you need medical assistance? The question was asked with such sincere worry that it took several moments for the implications to sink in. The human was looking at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization and seeing them as sickly creatures in need of help. We are perfectly healthy according to our species standards, Hivesh said stiffly. If you say so, Jin replied, though her tone suggested she had serious doubts. But if any of you ever need help, please, don't hesitate to ask. My people are always willing to assist those who can't take care of themselves. The offer was made with obvious kindness, but it hit the chamber like an insult. The greatest civilizations in the galaxy were being offered charity by a species that had achieved spaceflight less than 500 years ago. We appreciate your concern, Zethkara said through gritted mandibles. But we are quite capable of managing our own affairs. Of course you are, Jin agreed, though her expression remained doubtful. I'm sure you've done very well, considering your limitations. The diplomatic situation was deteriorating rapidly. What should have been a simple welcome ceremony was turning into an unintentional display of human superiority. Every word Jin spoke, no matter how kindly intended, reinforced the growing fear that humans viewed the rest of the galaxy as weak and helpless. Perhaps we should discuss your expansion plans, Mordoon said, desperate to change the subject. We don't really have plans, Jin admitted. We just go where we're needed. There are a lot of empty systems out there with untapped potential. Worlds where life could flourish if someone was willing to put in the work. And you believe your people are suited for this work? Jin's smile returned, brighter than before. We've had a lot of practice. She gestured toward a datapad displaying images from various human colonies. Cities built into mountainsides, on high-gravity worlds. Underwater settlements, on ocean planets. Communities thriving in the midst of active volcanic zones. These are temporary structures? Quinn asked hopefully. Oh no, these are permanent homes. My people plan to be there for generations. We've learned that the most challenging environments often become the most rewarding places to live. The representatives stared at the images in growing horror. Humans weren't just surviving in impossible conditions. They were building civilizations, in places where other species couldn't even land safely. The children, Hivesh whispered, pointing at an image of young humans playing in what appeared to be a pool of liquid methane. How do they survive? No. They adapt quickly, Jin said proudly. Human children are incredibly resilient. These particular kids are second-generation colonists. They think this is normal. The implications were staggering. If human children could adapt to conditions that would kill adult representatives from other species, what would they be capable of as they matured? What kind of galaxy were they inheriting? I think, Zethkara said slowly, that we may need to reconsider our standard diplomatic protocols. Jin nodded enthusiastically. That's a great idea. I was wondering why we were meeting on this lovely little station when we could be talking somewhere more interesting. There's a beautiful world in the Vega system with active tectonics and fascinating atmospheric chemistry. Much better for serious conversations. The assembled representatives looked at each other in poorly concealed panic. The human was suggesting they continue negotiations on what sounded like another death world. Perhaps, Mordoon said carefully, we could arrange for further discussions through subspace communication. People off. If that's what you prefer, Jin said, though she looked disappointed. I understand that some species aren't comfortable with direct contact. As the diplomatic session ended and Jin departed for her ship, the representatives remained in the chamber, processing what had just occurred. She called us fragile, Quinn said in disbelief. She offered us charity, added Hivesh. She suggested we continue negotiations on a death world, Mordoon concluded. Zethkara watched through the observation windows as Jin's ship departed. The vessel moved with casual ease through the station's defensive fields, systems that were designed to stop incoming threats. To the human pilot, they were apparently just mild inconveniences. I don't think they understand, she said quietly, that they're terrifying us. What do we do now? Hivesh asked. Zethkara continued watching the human ship until it disappeared into faster-than-light travel. Somewhere in the galaxy, more humans were establishing colonies on worlds that should be uninhabitable, growing stronger in conditions that would kill other species. Building a civilization based on principles that the rest of the galaxy couldn't comprehend. We learned to live with the knowledge, she said finally, that we are no longer the apex of galactic evolution. Outside the station, space seemed a little less safe than it had that morning. The first warning came from the Outer Rim monitoring station on Helix 7. Senior Operator Vashti was reviewing routine sensor sweeps when the readings changed from normal space traffic to something that made her breathing apparatus malfunction from shock. Command, this is Helix 7. I'm reading massive fleet movement in the Nexari Imperium territory. Estimated 1,200 vessels on direct course for the outer colonies. The response came within minutes from Admiral Kethvar, his usually calm voice tight with barely controlled panic. Confirmed. Helix 7. All civilian populations in the target zones are to begin immediate evacuation. Military assets will provide cover for withdrawal operations. Vashti pulled up the evacuation routes on her display. The Nexari were a warrior empire that had been contained through careful diplomacy for 3 centuries. If they were moving their entire fleet, it meant they had decided the time for treaties was over. "Sir," she said into her communicator, "the evacuation routes pass through 7 systems with new human colonies. Should we relay the warning to them?" "Sir." There was a long pause before Kethvar responded. "Send the warning. But don't expect them to understand the danger. Their species has no experience with real warfare." Vashti opened a channel to the human settlement on Zirion Prime. The planet was a marginal world, with extreme weather and challenging terrain. But the humans had somehow built a thriving community there in just 2 years. "This is Galactic Defense Force Station, Helix 7, calling Zirion Prime Colony. Please respond immediately." The response came in the form of a cheerful human voice that sounded far too relaxed for a species facing imminent destruction. "Hey there, Helix 7. This is Colony Administrator Park Minjun. What can we do for you?" "Administrator Park, you need to begin immediate evacuation procedures. A hostile fleet numbering over 1,000 vessels is approaching your position. Estimated arrival in 18 hours. There was a brief pause. Then Park's voice returned, sounding curious rather than alarmed. "Hostile in what way? Are they planning to attack the colony?" Vashti felt her exoskeleton tighten with frustration. Did the humans not understand what a fleet of Nexari warships meant? "Yes. Administrator. The Nexari Imperium has launched a full-scale assault on all Outer Rim settlements. You must evacuate your people immediately." "Thanks for the warning," Park replied. "But I think we'll stay and see what they want. Maybe this is just a big misunderstanding." "Administrator, this is not a misunderstanding. The Nexari are a conquering species. They don't negotiate. They destroy everything in their path." End quote. "Well, they haven't met humans yet," Park said with what sounded like mild amusement. "Maybe we can work something out. Thanks for letting us know, though." The communication channel closed, leaving Vashti staring at her instruments in disbelief. The humans were planning to stay and attempt diplomacy with a species that had turned negotiation into a form of torture. She opened channels to the other human colonies in the danger zone. The responses were all similar. Polite thanks for the warning, casual dismissal of the threat, and confident assertions that they could handle whatever was coming. "Command," she reported back to Admiral Kethvar. "The humans are refusing evacuation. They don't seem to understand the severity of the situation." "Noted," Kethvar replied grimly. "Continue monitoring and prepare to document what happens for the historical record." The next 18 hours passed with agonizing slowness. Vashti watched her sensors as the Nexari fleet approached the first human colony on Kepler 283d. The world was a frozen wasteland where the human settlers had built their community inside natural cave systems, emerging only to tend massive greenhouse complexes that somehow thrived in the hostile environment. "First contact in 30 minutes, she reported to command. "Nexari fleet is maintaining attack formation." The Nexari arrival was everything Galactic Intelligence had expected. Massive warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and immediately began broadcasting demands for surrender. Their weapons charged to full power, painting the human settlement with targeting indicators that should have sent any sane species fleeing in terror. Instead, the humans responded with a simple message: "Welcome to Kepler 283d. We're sorry you made this long trip, but we're not interested in surrendering. Please leave our system peacefully, and we won't have any problems." The Nexari response was predictable. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, intended to obliterate the human structures and demonstrate the futility of resistance. What happened next defied every military prediction in the galactic database. The human settlement didn't simply survive the initial bombardment. It absorbed the attacks like they were minor inconveniences. Buildings that should have been vaporized showed scorch marks but remained standing. Defensive systems that shouldn't have existed engaged the Nexari ships with return fire that was both precise and devastating. "How are they doing this?" Vashti whispered, watching her sensors register impossible readings. The answer came in the form of human voices on the communication channels. Voices that remained calm and focused, even as orbital bombardment rained down around them. Sector 7 reports direct hit on the greenhouse complex. Minimal damage. We'll have it repaired by tomorrow. Defensive Battery 3 has target lock on the lead Nexari vessel. Permission to return fire? Granted. Try to disable, rather than destroy. These people might be reasonable once they calm down. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were fighting back while maintaining hope for a peaceful resolution. They were absorbing attacks that should have killed them while planning repair schedules for tomorrow. They were treating orbital bombardment like a temporary weather problem. Vashti watched in growing amazement as human defensive systems began systematically disabling Nexari vessels. The attacks weren't random or desperate. They were surgical, precise, designed to neutralize threats while preserving enemy lives whenever possible. "This is impossible," she breathed, accessing every database she had clearance for. Humans have been in space for less than 500 years. How do they have military technology this advanced? The answer came from intercepted human communications. The defensive systems weren't just advanced technology. They were applications of the same engineering principles humans used for everything else. Robust, reliable, designed to function under extreme conditions. Thermal regulation holding steady despite the plasma bombardment. These Nexari weapons run hot, but they're not much worse than a summer day in Death Valley. Structural integrity at 93% after direct hit from kinetic impactor. Good thing we built this place to withstand seismic activity. Shield generators cycling normally. The power output from these weapons is actually pretty impressive. But we designed our systems for solar storm season, so we have plenty of margin. The humans had built their colony to survive their own planet's harsh conditions. The Nexari weapons, designed to destroy civilizations, were being absorbed by infrastructure meant to handle environmental extremes. But it wasn't just the technology that was devastating the Nexari forces. It was the humans themselves. Vashti watched sensor readings that showed individual humans moving through the combat zone with impossible casualness. They repaired damage while under fire. They rescued wounded Nexari crew members from disabled ships. They maintained their daily routines, even as a battle raged around their homes. "Why aren't they afraid?" she asked aloud, though no one was there to answer. The battle for Kepler 283d lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Nexari fleet was completely disabled, their crews rescued and being treated in human medical facilities. Not a single human casualty was reported. "This is Colony Administrator Park," came the familiar voice over the communication channel. "Helix 7. Are you still monitoring?" "Yes, Administrator," Vashti replied, her voice barely functioning. "Could you send a message to your command? We've got about 800 Nexari personnel here who are going to need transportation back to their home systems. They're not hurt, but their ships aren't going anywhere for a while. You want us to arrange transportation for the enemy forces?" "They're not enemies," Park said with obvious confusion. "They're just people who made some poor decisions. Once they calm down and we explain the situation, I'm sure we can all get along fine." Vashti closed the communication channel and sat in silence, trying to process what she had witnessed. The most feared military force in the galaxy had been neutralized by a human colony that treated the entire conflict as a minor misunderstanding. Over the next few days, Similar reports came in from every human settlement the Nexari had attacked. Complete defensive victories, minimal casualties on both sides, and humans treating their defeated enemies with the same casual kindness they showed to unexpected guests. Command, Vashti finally reported to Admiral Kethvar. The humans have successfully repelled the entire Nexari invasion. They're requesting assistance with prisoner transport and asking if we have any good recipes for foods that won't upset Nexari digestive systems. The silence from command stretched for several minutes. Did they say recipes? Kethvar asked finally. Yes, sir. Apparently they're planning to host a cultural exchange dinner to help improve relations with their former attackers. Another long silence. Operator Vashti. Please file this report under anomalous events requiring further study. And request reassignment to a monitoring post in a sector with no human colonies. Sir? I need some time to adjust my understanding of what constitutes normal military engagement. As Vashti prepared her report, she couldn't stop thinking about the casual confidence in Park's voice as he dealt with an invasion force. The humans hadn't just won an impossible victory, they had won it while maintaining their essential humanity, treating enemies as potential friends, and approaching warfare as an unfortunate misunderstanding to be resolved. Somewhere in the galaxy, other species were learning that humanity's ascension to spacefaring civilization came with capabilities that defied all previous military analysis. The age of human expansion had become the age of human protection, whether the galaxy wanted it or not. The medical center on Altair Station had never been designed to treat psychological conditions affecting entire species. Dr. Yeshara, the station's chief psychiatric specialist, found herself faced with a problem that challenged every principle of galactic mental health care. The symptoms are consistent across all species, she reported to the Emergency Medical Council via subspace communication. Elevated stress responses, chronic anxiety, and what appears to be an instinctive fear reaction triggered by the mere mention of humans. Council member Thexani's image flickered on the communication screen, his scaled features showing obvious distress. How many cases have you documented? Over 3,000 individuals from 47 different species. The condition appears to be spreading through normal social contact. Affected individuals report persistent thoughts about human capabilities, disrupted sleep cycles, and in severe cases, complete inability to function in systems known to contain human colonies. Dr. Yeshara pulled up her most recent case files. The patients ranged from experienced military personnel to civilian traders. But they all showed the same symptoms. They had heard stories about human activities, and their minds couldn't accept what they were being told. The triggering events are remarkably consistent, she continued. Exposure to reports about human colonies thriving on Class 12 Deathworlds. Witness accounts of humans treating Nexari invasion forces as house guests. Intelligence briefings about human children playing in conditions that would kill most adults from other species. Is this condition contagious? Thexani asked, his voice tight with concern. Not in the traditional sense. But exposure to detailed information about human activities does seem to trigger onset in previously unaffected individuals. We've had to restrict access to human-related intelligence reports to prevent further spread. The irony wasn't lost on Dr. Yeshara. The galactic medical community was essentially quarantining information about humanity because thinking about humans too much was making other species psychologically unstable. What does the literature say about treatment options? There is no literature. This is an entirely new condition. We've tentatively named it Terran syndrome, based on the primary trigger factor. Dr. Yeshara switched to her most recent case file. Commander Vexith of the Galactic Defense Force had been admitted after suffering a complete psychological breakdown during a routine intelligence briefing. The commander was exposed to a classified report about human industrial capabilities, she explained to the council. Apparently, humans have established mining operations inside active stellar coronas. Not with automated systems, with crewed vessels. That's impossible, Thexani said flatly. That's exactly what Commander Vexith said. Repeatedly. For 6 hours, while rocking back and forth in a corner of his office. The medical implications were staggering. An entire galaxy was developing psychological trauma from learning about human activities that were, from a human perspective, completely normal. Dr. Yeshhara, what is your professional recommendation? She looked at her accumulated data, trying to find a treatment approach that made sense. Honestly, we need to limit information flow about human activities until we can develop coping strategies for other species. You're suggesting we classify normal human behavior as a psychological hazard? I'm suggesting that normal human behavior is beyond the conceptual framework that most species use to understand reality. When that framework breaks down, the result is severe psychological distress. Her communication system chimed with an incoming emergency call. Dr. Yeshhara glanced at the caller identification and felt her own stress levels spike. Council member, I need to take this. We have a situation developing. She switched channels to find Ambassador Jin Sumin's face on her screen. The human looked concerned, but maintained the same casual confidence that seemed to characterize her entire species. Dr. Yeshhara, I understand you've been treating people who are having trouble adjusting to news about human activities. I wanted to offer assistance. The irony was almost overwhelming. The source of the psychological epidemic was offering to help treat its effects. Ambassador, that's very kind, but I'm not sure. I've been reviewing your published research on interspecies psychology, Jin interrupted. Very impressive work, by the way. But I think there might be a fundamental misunderstanding about what's causing these stress responses. Dr. Yeshhara felt her own symptoms beginning to manifest. The casual way Jin discussed reviewing complex psychological research, as if it were light entertainment, triggered the same unsettling response her patients described. What kind of misunderstanding? I think other species are overestimating how unusual human activities actually are. From our perspective, we're just doing normal things in normal environments. The disconnect seems to be in the classification systems everyone else uses. Ambassador, your people are mining inside stellar coronas. Jin's expression brightened with obvious enthusiasm. The Kim family operation. Right? Beautiful work. They've managed to extract rare isotopes that form only under extreme stellar conditions. The engineering challenges were fascinating. You speak about it like it's a hobby project. Well, it started as one. Young Ho Kim was always interested in stellar mechanics, and when he retired from engineering, his family wanted to give him something challenging to work on. Stellar core mining seemed like a good fit. Dr. Yeshhara felt her breathing apparatus struggle to maintain rhythm. A human family had undertaken stellar core mining as a retirement hobby project. The most dangerous industrial activity in known space was being treated like garden maintenance. Ambassador, do you understand why other species find this information disturbing? Jin's expression shifted to one of genuine concern. I'm beginning to understand that there's a significant difference in what different species consider normal. Is this why so many people seem to be afraid of humans? Not afraid, exactly. More like, unable to process the implications of your capabilities. That's unfortunate, Jin said, and her tone carried real sadness. My people have been hoping to build positive relationships with galactic civilization. We were looking forward to making friends. The simple, sincere statement hit Dr. Yeshhara like a physical blow. Here was a representative of a species that could apparently survive anything the universe could throw at them. And she was sad that others found them overwhelming. Ambassador, perhaps we could arrange some kind of cultural exchange program? Something that might help other species understand human activities in context? That's a wonderful idea. I could arrange for some families to host visitors. We have a lovely community on Proxima 7 that's very welcoming to guests. Dr. Yeshhara quickly accessed the system database. Proxima 7 was classified as a Class 11 death world, with surface temperatures that fluctuated between extremes that would flash freeze or incinerate most species. Perhaps somewhere a bit more moderate? She suggested carefully. Oh, you're right. Proxima 7 might be too exciting for first-time visitors. What about the colony on Kepler 438c? Very calm there. Perfect for relaxation. Kepler 438c. The planet where human children played in snowstorms that registered as severe weather hazards for most galactic military equipment. Ambassador, I think we may need to start with virtual cultural exchanges. Video communications from safe distances. Jin looked disappointed, but nodded understanding. I suppose that makes sense. My daughter Minseo has been working on a documentary about daily life in our communities. Maybe that would be helpful? That sounds perfect. Dr. Yeshara agreed, though she made a mental note to screen the documentary herself before showing it to patients. The last thing she needed was more cases of Terran syndrome. After the communication ended, Dr. Yeshara sat in her office, trying to formulate a treatment plan for a condition that shouldn't exist. How do you help someone cope with the knowledge that there are beings in the galaxy who consider Class 12 death worlds to be relaxing vacation destinations? Her computer chimed with an incoming message from the Galactic Council. A formal request for psychological evaluation protocols for species that might come into direct contact with humans. The message was marked as highest priority and classified at levels she had never seen before. Apparently, the psychological impact of human activities was being treated as a galactic security issue. Dr. Yeshara began drafting her response, trying to explain to galactic leadership that their problem wasn't medical or security related. It was conceptual. The galaxy had simply never encountered a species that treated impossibility as a minor inconvenience. Recommendation, she typed carefully. Establish long-term psychological preparation programs for species that may interact with humans. Prepare individuals gradually for the reality that human normal exceeds most species' definition of extreme. She paused, then added a personal note. It may be necessary to accept that humanity represents a fundamental shift in what constitutes possible within galactic civilization. As she submitted her report, Dr. Yeshara wondered if future historians would mark this period as the end of the age of known limitations. Humanity had ascended to the stars, carrying with them the assumption that nothing was truly impossible. The rest of the galaxy was slowly learning to live with the psychological implications of that assumption. Outside her office window, she could see cargo ships arriving from human colonies, carrying goods that shouldn't exist, produced in conditions that shouldn't allow for complex manufacturing. Tomorrow, she would begin treating more patients whose minds couldn't accept the evidence their eyes were showing them. The age of human ascension had become the age of galactic adjustment, whether the galaxy was ready for it or not. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called in the deepest levels of the central station, behind shields that could withstand stellar bombardment. Around the massive table, representatives from every major civilization sat in unprecedented unity. Fear had a way of bringing together species that had spent millennia in careful diplomatic competition. Zethkara reviewed the data streams one final time before speaking. The readings made no sense, but they had been confirmed by every sensor array in the galaxy. Something was moving toward them from the void between galaxies, and it was larger than anything in recorded history. The object measures approximately 50,000 kilometers in diameter, she announced to the assembled representatives. Current velocity suggests it will reach the outer systems of our galaxy within 6 standard months. Mordun's crystalline form flickered with patterns that indicated extreme distress. Analysis confirms. This matches the description of entities mentioned in the predecessor archives, the ones that drove the ancients to extinction. A collective shudder ran through the chamber. The predecessors had been the previous apex civilization, so advanced that their technology still couldn't be fully understood millions of years after their disappearance. If something had been powerful enough to destroy them, current galactic civilization had no hope of resistance. Evacuation protocols? Asked Admiral Kethvar, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Impossible, replied tech specialist Quinn. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of civilizations facing extinction. Countless species, billions of years of evolution, all of it about to end because something incomprehensible had noticed their galaxy. There is one possibility, Zethkara said quietly, accessing files she had hoped never to open. The humans. CQ. 2-4. Every head in the chamber turned toward her. Even mentioning humanity in the context of galactic defense should have been absurd. They were still newcomers, barely past their first few centuries of spaceflight. The humans? Mordon repeated, his voice carrying disbelief. What could they possibly do against something that destroyed the predecessors? I don't know, Zethkara admitted, but they have a history of accomplishing things that should be impossible. Admiral Kethvar pulled up the human expansion data on his display. They've established colonies in over 200 systems, most of them in environments we consider uninhabitable. Their population growth rate is unlike anything we've seen from a technological species. More importantly, Zethkara continued, they don't seem to understand the concept of insurmountable obstacles. Every challenge they've faced, they've treated as a problem to be solved, rather than a limitation to accept. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. The rest of the galaxy was preparing to accept extinction because the threat was beyond their comprehension. The humans might not even recognize it as a threat worth running from. Are we seriously considering asking a species that's been in space for less than 500 years to defend the galaxy? Asked Hivesh. Do we have a choice? Zethkara replied. The vote was unanimous. Ambassador Jin Su-min arrived at the emergency station within hours of the Council's request. She entered the shielded chamber with the same casual confidence she brought to all diplomatic meetings. Apparently unimpressed by the unprecedented security measures. Thank you for coming on such short notice, Mordoon began formally. We have a situation that requires immediate attention. Happy to help, Jin replied, settling into her chair with obvious comfort despite the tense atmosphere. What can humanity do for you? Zethkara activated the main display, showing the approaching entity. The massive object moved through space like a dark star, bending light around its edges and leaving trailing distortions that suggested physics-defying properties. This object will reach our galaxy in 6 months, she explained. Based on historical records, it represents an extinction-level threat to all known civilization. Jin studied the display with the same focused attention she might give to a weather report. Interesting. What do you know about its capabilities? Doc. It destroyed the predecessor civilization. Technology that we still can't match after millions of years was insufficient to stop it. Jin continued examining the data, occasionally asking for different sensor readings or historical comparisons. Have you tried communicating with it? Not a fime. The question hit the chamber like a physical blow. Communicate with an entity that had casually destroyed the most advanced civilization in galactic history? The concept hadn't even occurred to them. No, Mordoon admitted. The historical records suggest communication is impossible. Everything's worth trying once, Jin said cheerfully. But assuming that doesn't work, what were you hoping humanity could do? We were hoping, Zethkara said carefully, that your people might have some ideas about how to address this threat. Address it how? Fight it? Redirect it? Make friends with it? The casual way she listed options that ranged from impossible to insane made several representatives make quiet sounds of distress. Jin was discussing potential strategies for dealing with a galactic extinction event, like she was planning a family picnic. Any of those options would be acceptable, Admiral Kethvar said weakly. Well, fighting it seems inefficient, unless we know what it wants, Jin mused. Redirecting something that size would require more energy than most stars produce. Making friends is always the best option when possible. And quote. She paused, studying the sensor data more carefully. Actually, this is kind of exciting. We've never encountered anything this large before. The engineering challenges alone would be fascinating to work with. Ambassador, Zethkara said slowly, this entity represents the end of galactic civilization as we know it. Only if it's hostile, Jin corrected. And only if we can't find a way to coexist with it. You're all thinking about this as a problem. But it might be an opportunity. An opportunity for what? To learn something new. To grow as a galactic community. To prove that intelligence can find solutions to any challenge. Jin's enthusiasm was growing as she spoke. This is exactly the kind of situation that brings out the best in people. The representatives stared at her in various states of shock. She was looking at galactic extinction as a chance for personal growth and community building. What would humanity need to investigate this entity? Mordun asked, apparently deciding to follow Jin's logic rather than question it. Time to study it, permission to approach it, and probably some volunteers for the initial contact team. Jin pulled up her own datapad and began making notes. I know several families who would be interested in this kind of project. The Lee family has experience with large-scale engineering problems, and the Nakamura group has been looking for something challenging to work on. Families? Admiral Kethvar repeated. Well, this is going to be a long-term project. Probably takes several generations to fully understand what we're dealing with. Family groups are better for that kind of extended commitment. Zethkara felt the familiar sensation of reality shifting around her that seemed to accompany all interactions with humans. Somehow, Jin had transformed the conversation from galactic evacuation planning to project management for a multi-generational research initiative. Ambassador, what if this entity is actively hostile? Then we'll figure out why and see if we can address its concerns, Jin said simply. Most conflicts happen because of misunderstandings or unmet needs. Very few beings are hostile just for the sake of being hostile. And if it's beyond our ability to understand or communicate with, then we'll adapt until we can understand it. Humans are very good at adaptation. The chamber fell silent as the assembled representatives tried to process what they were hearing. The rest of the galaxy was preparing for extinction, and humanity was planning to treat the incoming threat as a learning opportunity. We'll need to coordinate with your military forces, Jin continued, making more notes. Not for combat, but for logistics. And we should probably prepare some kind of welcome ceremony. First impressions are important. Welcome ceremony? Hivesh whispered. Well, if this entity is intelligent, it's probably curious about our galaxy. We should make a good first impression. Show that we're a civilized, peaceful community worth knowing. Over the following months, the galaxy watched in amazement as humanity approached the incoming threat with the same casual confidence they brought to colonizing Deathworlds. They dispatched research vessels to study the entity, prepared first contact protocols, and began manufacturing what they called friendship gifts, technological samples that demonstrated galactic civilization's achievements. When the entity finally arrived at the galaxy's edge, it was met not by weapons or desperate evacuation fleets, but by a small human delegation, led by a family group that specialized in meeting new people. The first communication was simple. Welcome to our galaxy. We're excited to meet you and learn about where you come from. The response came in the form of gravitational waves that roughly translated to curiosity and cautious interest. 6 months later, Ambassador Jin Sumin stood before the Galactic Council to deliver her final report on what the media had started calling the Great Introduction. The entity calls itself a wanderer, she explained to the assembled representatives. It's been traveling between galaxies for millions of years, studying the development of intelligent life. It was attracted to our galaxy by the unusual energy signatures coming from human industrial activities. It was curious about us? Zethkara asked. Specifically about humans, Jin corrected. Apparently, most species it encounters reach a technological plateau and stop pushing boundaries. It was interested in meeting a species that kept trying to do impossible things. Mordoon's form flickered with what might have been confusion. What happened to the predecessors? And they tried to fight it, Jin said sadly. The Wanderer was disappointed by their reaction. It had hoped for friends, but found only fear. After their civilization destroyed itself trying to build weapons against it, the Wanderer went dormant for several million years. And now? Jin smiled with genuine warmth. Now it's planning to stay for a while. It wants to learn about human engineering and see what we accomplish next. Apparently, we're the first species it's met that treats impossibility as a starting point rather than a stopping point. As the session ended and representatives began filing out, Zeth Kara remained in her seat, trying to process what had occurred. Humanity had faced down a threat that destroyed civilizations by refusing to see it as a threat. They had transformed galactic extinction into galactic expansion by treating an ancient entity as a potential friend rather than an inevitable enemy. Outside the chamber windows, she could see human ships working alongside massive constructs that defied easy description. The Wanderer was sharing its knowledge of intergalactic travel, and humans were already planning expeditions to other galaxies. The age of human ascension had become the age of galactic transcendence, carrying the entire galaxy beyond the limitations that had defined them for millions of years. Somewhere in the void between stars, other wanderers were taking notice of the unusual activity in what had once been an unremarkable spiral galaxy. The news was spreading that there was finally a species worth getting to know. The galaxy trembled, but no longer in fear. It trembled with anticipation of what impossible thing humanity would accomplish next.